what it is.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And I know that that many people have strong reasons for their opinions on why marriage law is the way that it is. Get that. And there's people who don't want to be called mean because they disagree on the topic. And there's other people who feel that it really just is so hurtful. And I have friends who are gay and are in committed relationships and want to be recognized by the state the way everyone else does. And I have a bunch of friends who are like, I'm not going to get tied up in is all that legal mumbo jumbo called marriage. Like, I'm not having anything to do with that. It's more complicated. But I have friends who really want that same kind of recognition that everyone else has. What we have to acknowledge, in my view, is that our current state law, the statutes about marriage, are fairly straightforward, and they do make limitations, but those limitations that are made are not being made based on religious impulses. They're being made on social mores and social discomfort. Here's what I mean. One of the 4 restrictions of who can be married in the state of Minnesota, one of them is people of the same gender. Another of them is, and this is item number 2 in the current marriage law, that marriage is not allowed between ancestors or descendants, between a brother or a sister, whether by relationship is half or whole, by blood, or by adoption. So we say in Minnesota statute, adopted children can't marry one another. Now, there's no argument to be made that adopted children are going to pass on a recessive gene, right? It's not recessive gene argument. It is in our current law that we just find it to be off-putting that kids who were raised in the same family would then become husband and wife. So we say in law, now in 2011, adopted children with no biological connectivity, children can't be married. Not because the Bible says it and not because science says it, but because our social construct says, we find that creepy. Mm-hmm. We don't want to. Well, in 1905, it was epileptics that couldn't get married. So we've had this sense that there's limitations on who can be married, and it's not based on the Bible. And to Dan's point and to Randy's point, and even to Beth's point, I get that people think that our judicial system is based on our morals. Our judicial system is based on our sensibilities, and our sensibilities have been informed by a whole number of factors, including our religious upbringing for some of us. But they're not the same thing as saying that it's based on that idea. So if you believe that the current state statutes are really about some overarching ethic, they're really based around some sort of social acceptability. That's why we don't allow adopted children to be married, but we do now allow 16-year-olds to become married with parental consent. Dale, I think you've got some thoughts on this. And Dale and others have called us at 952-946-6205. Hey, Dale. Sorry about that. Hey, Dale.
Okay, one point I wanted to make about Dan's comment about the Bible is Leviticus was written, I've got a background in theology. Leviticus was written at a much different time in a much different society. Mm-hmm. And one thing that people, I don't think, understand when they read that is that this was a society, in many cases, literally under siege. And that people that in any way deviated from that quite often were seen as a threat to that society and the cohesiveness, the sensibility of that society. That's really not the case today.
So Dale, it sounds like you're suggesting that maybe a kind of Levitical law, or the law for a tribal group of people 5,000 years ago, is not what our current legal statutes are based on, nor should they be. Is that close to what you're saying?
That's part of it, and the other end too is that, and they did, the thing at that point was if you deviated from it, and you were seen as some way that weakened that society. I mean, right. And today that is not the case. I mean, we're a much more stable society. We're much it's cohesiveness just there. I mean, my question is, if it was written today, I don't think with a better understanding of sexual psychology and human relationships, I'm not so sure Leviticus would be written the same way.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that. And I'll tell you that item number 517 in the Minnesota State Statutes is about marriage. So if you look it up on the Secretary of State or on the state legislature website, 517, it's not the references are not rooted in the Old and New Testament. That's just not where they are. They shouldn't be, because the Old and New Testament didn't have legal contracts in their marriage. Marriage was not legal contracts. Religious people, I'm one of them. I'm a pastor. I perform wedding ceremonies. I actually think it's wrong that pastors can perform legal ceremonies. I think we should be able to perform religious ceremonies, but I think it's inappropriate to be providing legal ceremonies. And it's not based on Levitical law. It's not based on the New Testament writings. It's not even based on the teachings of Jesus. It's just not where it comes from. And I know that there's people who want to believe that they live in a country where the Bible and the laws are really harmonious, living in harmonious relationship, but they're not. They're not in conflict all the time, but they're just not based on one another. They don't have that kind of reciprocal relationship. So, Dale, thanks for the call. Brad from Shoreview. Brad, you want to talk about the 14th Amendment, do you?
Yeah, I mean, corporations seem to have more rights than gay people. I mean, the fact of the matter is this is equal protection under the law. They're not harming anyone else, and it's just plain silly to have any of this stuff. I mean, religion and government, when they wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they remembered what the church did in Europe. That's why they didn't want to have any religion in government. And that's the whole point of it. You're free to, and you're free from religion. Yeah. The church doesn't get the chance to string you up or do whatever they want.
Yeah, Dale, Brad, I think you're onto something, and that's part of the reason why I think that in addition to the movement, this marriage amendment movement, I think someone ought to start up an amendment to the statute to remove clergy from having preferential treatment in declaring marriage. Either we make it for everyone to be able to do, like you would notarizing someone for the legal contract. But as long as we're going to give religious people preference, like religion and then a couple of judges, right, the ability to perform wedding ceremonies, we're going to keep these two issues tied together. So the only way to disentangle them, in my view, is to remove the preferential treatment. And there's a number of states in which being a clergy doesn't give you any preference at all in performing a marriage ceremony. Well, it's very odd that we have retreated, as you've said, back into that kind of European 16th and 17th century view that the clergy speak on behalf of the state.
Right. Yeah. And, one has nothing to do with the other. And the other thing is the Republicans love to use this as a tool. They used abortion. If they were really serious about abortion, they would have gotten rid of it when they had the House, Senate, and the presidency.
Yeah.
So the fact is they're just using that, and they use. You ever heard of George Lakoff? He does things about linguistics, speech, and framing. And really, I wish you could get him on your show.
Right. And he does some stuff about the political language and how you can set up a political language set. Yeah.
Well, that's all I had to say.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. I was trying to say here before at the start of this break that we have this social construct, not a religious construct and not a scientific construct in our current marriage law. The third restriction on who can be married is no marriage between an uncle or a niece, an aunt or a nephew, between a first cousins, whether if the relationship is half or whole blood, except as to marriages permitted and established by customs of Aboriginal cultures. So we have this notion that says, okay, you can't marry your aunt, even if there's no blood connection, right? Like you're a child and your dad's brother has married a woman. You can't marry her. There's no religious connection unless you come from an Aboriginal community.
Is that true?
That's true. So that's in the state law, right? So 517, you can go on to the Minnesota.
No matter how hot the aunt is.
No matter how hot the auntie is. That's right. Doesn't make any difference. You can't marry your aunt unless it's by Aboriginal cultures. So what I'm saying is, in our current law, there's all of this social construct, which is, what do we feel comfortable with? So then when you get to number 4, which says marriage between persons of the same sex, it's for the same reason that people are uncomfortable with folks of the same sex demonstrating their love for one another. And that's why it's against the law. It's not against the law for any reason other than there's no scientific reason, there's no Bible reason. That's not why it's there. So if someone wants to suggest, as I know good-hearted people are trying to do, that the 4th limitation in Minnesota Statute 517 about same gender is put there because of the Bible, then you would have to say, well, then the same thing has to be there for the other 3 restrictions, and they're simply not.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks a lot, Brad. Hey, Rich or Gary from Minneapolis. Gary, we're going to go to you, and Rich, we may have to hold you over to the break. Gary, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I was just going to say I got a lot of insight into how we got a lot of our beliefs, the fundamental. So we have so many fundamentals in America because American Theocracy by Kevin Phillips said that they fled Europe when they had the church states that came over here, so many of the fundamental extremists.
Yeah.
And Europe got to have so many people that didn't go to church because they got turned off by church because of all the Inquisition in Spain, and the Pilgrims came over here, and the other people stopped going to church. But they have a lot more morals in a lot of ways than we do here in Europe today. They found out that just going to church ain't how you always get morals.
Yeah, that's not really how it comes. Gary, thanks. I appreciate the call. We do have to run into a hard break here. I think, Gary, you're bringing up a good point that we're all sitting inside of a social system. So let's grant that these kinds of changes can seem peculiar and hard and odd to people, and it's going to take some of us a little different time. That maybe we're moving the same direction, but we're on different time schedules. So as we have these conversations, there's some ways we can find a way forward. Rich, if you can hold on, we'll talk to you after the break. Give us a call, 952-946-6205.
Lord knows to my surprise, the only one who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. Walk right in, sit right